Just to kind of get us started, and then we'll get at the end for the audience. When you look at your career journey, there's likely a moment where the path didn't go as planned. Share briefly what was the most important turning point and what did it require from you to move forward? Let's start.
I was with the Central Intelligence Agency for 36 years. I was with the CIA for 36 years. And I didn't get an overseas assignment that I wanted. I was what they call a technical intelligence officer. So I provided spy gear to people who were recruiting the spy for the United States. So I traveled around the world. If you've ever seen the James Bond movie, it's like Q, the gadgetry shot Q. So I was one of those people. And I had gone to this installation overseas for the summer. I replaced somebody who was on leave. And the chief of the base said, "Wow, you're great, you gotta come back next year for a permanent change of station, for 2 or 3 years." I thought, great. And I thought it was in the bag. And I got back to Washington, and the person who was doing the hiring said, "Oh, well, just because the chief of base says he wants you doesn't mean anything." I wasn't one of his favorites. I'm gonna be a Jersey girl, I didn't kiss his ass. And so he said, "Well, you're gonna have to take a test." I said, "Why?" "Well, you've done the real work." "Oh, but I want some other people to apply too." And I thought, this sounds like discrimination. And when I talked to EEO, and they said, no, it's gonna take a long time, whatever. So I took the test. And at the end of the day, I got the best thing. It was a piece of the spy gear that we had. And I did. And I said, "Well, you're gonna go, right?" I said, "Well, I'll think about that now." And I decided not to go. And I said to myself, I don't want to go because I have to still report to the jerk who made me take the test. And everyone said, "You're ruining your career." And I said, "If this is going to ruin my career, then to hell with the CIA." And somebody called me up and said, "Hey, there's an opportunity in recruitment, personnel recruitment. You've done public speaking, whatever. Would you like to do that?" I said, "Yeah." And I left covert operations and found HR, and that changed my life. And I hadn't really felt that espionage was my vocation in life. I was from, but this showed me what my real vocation was in life, and that was a big turn.
Thank you for sharing that. You and I had a brief conversation about things that you learn in CIA, you apply it in the HR world as an HR practitioner.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So know your values.
Yes, you have to know who you are inside. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
That's something
Right. When you look at your career journey, there's likely a moment where the path didn't go as planned. Share briefly what was the most important turning point and what did it require from you to move forward?
immediately come back to a scenario where, for lack of better words, I played chicken. You know how you play chicken? You're like, but I won, right? So it was this scenario where my organization was moving out of state, and I was like, I cannot relocate. I have children. I can't relocate out of state. So I took a separate path. Then I saw that my same job was posted 2 job levels higher than what I was at my replacement. And I said, oh, and it was from Connecticut to Boston. I was thinking to myself, well, I was making that kind of money. I could just commute. Like, I wouldn't have to relocate. I have a husband, I have a family, we can figure out the kid thing. So they tried to find a replacement for me, but I was so skilled at what I do in a very niche space where I said, hey, I know, give me the job at this level, and I'll go, right? I'll be the 3 days in the office and 2 days home. And they were like, yeah, we can't do that. We can't bump you up that high. And I said, okay, well, how about I leave the organization because you're not going to find someone with my skill set to jump in and do what I do. And I said, how about I leave? I take the separate package, and then I reapply and I doubled in.
There you go. Know your worth.
And I said that, and they were like, well, you have to apply. They made me apply for my own job. And of course I got it. Then the salary part, they were like, oh, well, we can't bump you up that much. I've been in the company long enough and I knew what the pay band was for that. And I said, no, I'm not gonna go for less than this. Well, we have to get HR approval, we can't give you a raise that high. Well, it's not a raise. I'm taking a brand new position at a brand new level. And inside I was going, oh my God, I can't not have a job, I need health insurance. My younger daughter was coming off of a clinical trial. She had a rare immune deficiency. I can't not have health insurance. I'm inside. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna stand my ground and I'm gonna play chicken. And I won. I got the job, with the pay I wanted. And then they go, oh, you want the relocation package? I go, no. I go, because if this is not feasible for my family and I in the long term, I don't want to be committed to it and have to pay back everything. But it was scary.
Know your worth, and sometimes we're afraid of asking for that, but this is such a, incredible story. And what would have happened if you would not have, voiced, your worth? Making sure that they know, you have value, and that's what sometimes they forget, that we have value. So incredible story, and Rosanna, can you pass it over to you?
So when I heard this question, so there's so many times in my career that things did not go as planned. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I think of 4 times that you had to pivot. I had to pivot, and it was not having enough of a supportive boss, an advocate, the culture, a toxic work environment, geopolitical market conditions, and then 4th, which is definitely not least, your physical and mental health. So those 4 things are usually the times that I've had to pivot, make a decision and whatnot. But when I think about the biggest ones that kind of really made and ended or shifted me into a different area would be the geopolitical ones. And so the first one was September 11th. It was just a year into my career, and I had just moved over to across the street to one of the World Trade Towers, one of the small ones, World Trade 5. And so, within maybe 6 months of having moved there, September 11th happened, and I was late to work, and and I saw it from outside, right outside the ferry, and all of that really impacted me. So when they finally had us back, we had to move uptown to a small boardroom. I was working at Deutsche Bank, and we moved to a small boardroom, and we were all kind of like this, typing in the laptop, and all of a sudden I was like, what am I doing here? Like it just, the existential crisis happened very early on. Usually it happens a little bit later. It happened within a year, and I said, what am I doing here? Like, I'm not making anything. I'm not doing anything. Like I was doing valuations for emerging markets, fixed income. And I talked to my boss that very same day, and I said, I don't feel like this is where I should be. It's just not feeling right. And that was one of the supportive, real big advocate supervisors that I had very early on, a woman. And she said, no, you're gonna sit. Everything's gonna be fine. You're just having, there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of things going on, right? Everyone's feeling this way. And so we talked for a bit, and we found a solution to what I was feeling. And it was great because not many supervisors would have been able to handle it the way she did. I would have been gone. I would have never had my 2 decades in finance career that I really enjoyed if that hadn't happened. And so that was that pivotal point when I said, I'm all in. I'm not going to leave. And not only am I not going to leave, I am going to make this the best career possible for myself. And this is the commitment that I'm making. And I made that very early on. The second time was during COVID, which many people also had another existential crisis. Like, what am I doing? Like, there's so many more important things to be doing. Like, you look at your job, you're like, this is not changing the world. And maybe you guys do, but mine, it didn't feel that way in finance. And I was doing electronic trading at the time. And during COVID, I also had kind of one of those epiphanies. I said, I've had 2+ decades in finance. I feel like I've done what I wanted to do. Everything's check, check, check. And now what? And so that was the opposite. I made the commitment to leave my corporate career, and I committed to moving. So I moved from New Jersey, New York area, to Florida. My whole family, I had buy-in from my husband, I had my son, everybody bought in. I even had my mother come down because soon after I landed in Florida, I conceived, which I hadn't been able to conceive for years. And so it was a good move. And And everything just worked out, but it was the commitment, right? It was the commitment and going all in. It was like I bought a, like we're talking, I decided, and within 3 months, I made an offer on a house, and I hadn't even seen it. Like it's, oh, sorry, through FaceTime. And I just went all in. So that's what it really required, commitment, making a decision, commitment, and doing it 100%.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And, you know, changes don't happen just once, and I think, you know, each of you have shared some incredible stories to get us started in this conversation. So I'm going to take a deeper dive with each of you. Given your career's movement across different fields and the legacy that you've built, how have you successfully pivoted from one profession and status to another? In other words, what are your thoughts on the key behaviors needed to manage these transitions?
Well, I think first of all, what has always helped me in my career and in my personal life is realize what I'm passionate about. You have to know what gets you going in the morning, what you love to do and what you're good at doing. As an executive, I eventually was the first Latina in HR to become an executive at CIA. And you know, my equivalent was like brigadier general or rear admiral, so it was pretty high. Anyway, bottom line is, I think you have to, as a leader and as yourself, you have to manage the strengths. You can't become a whiz at X when you know in your heart you're not. So build on your strengths, work in your strengths, work in your passion, and if you meet people, get them to that place too. Because you're going to get so much from the people you meet if you do that. The other thing I think is you have to be a continuous learner. You have to have a tool. You have to have intellectual curiosity. If you stop learning, you stop growing. If you stop growing, you start losing your value to organization, whether it's yours or you work for somebody, to your family. You have to grow. And I think last is, and I alluded to in my first answer, I think you have to know what your values are, what your professional values are. You have to know when you need to walk away from an organization or a boss or a colleague, and you have to say, you know what, not good for me to be around that. Because one thing I was taught at CIA that I carried with me, we were all about SIE, we love acronyms. Service, integrity, and excellence. If you can wake up every day and say, my life is about service, you know, I'm going to do what I do well, and I'm going to do the right thing. Integrity, I'm going to make judicious decisions. I'm going to stick to my principles, and I'm going to do it the very best way I can. I think that was a wonderful formula. General Michael Hayden, who I think was one of the finance directors I worked for, who was also director of the National Security Museum. He engraved that in us. And that's how I was socialized. I mean, I joined CIA when I was 21, right out of college, and 36 years. And it made me who I am. And I'm proud of that because it is a misunderstood organization many times, but it has remarkable people. Just a quick fact I have to share with you. So one of my positions was number 2 in talent acquisition. I had a lot of senior positions in HR, but one of them was that. And so when I was there, we on the average received 150,000 applications for employment every year. Every year. And out of those 150K, we hired in the very, very, very low 4 figures. What? So imagine the fun. And I was in charge of that. And it is a very lean organization. It's a unique organization. I mean, not everybody's going to really look to spot. I liked it. It was fun.
You spy in HR all the time.
Well, you know,
as their HR practitioner.
there's a common thing.
Yeah.
As an if you're in espionage, you have to, first of all, you have to know how to read people quickly, number 1. Number 2, you have to convince people to do something perhaps sometimes they don't want to do. So those are skills that really help me in HR and help me as a leader. And, you know, my ability to speak several languages and morph into different people and use different identities and all that stuff gave me an agility to be a citizen of the world. And that helps me in my business. I am quickly able to find a common thing, a common touch point with the people with whom I engage. And that's a very powerful thing as a leader, because we're all humans after all. And we have so many things that unite us rather than separate us. So that's what you do in the espionage business, that's what you do in the HR business, right? Is that? So there you go.
Oh my God, I want to meet you when I grow up.
Oh, it's been fun.
So many great nuggets. I gotta remember the SIE.
SIE, Service Integrity and Excellence. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jackie, so as a first generation professional, there are often expectations around stability and playing it safe, which you talked about. Did you ever feel tension between following the expected path and choosing your own? And how did you navigate that?
Yeah, well, we talked about that, and the first thing that came to my mind was my father. Why are you going to reach for the bird that's flying when you have one in your other hand? You're gonna end up with no birds. And I was like, what do you mean about birds? I was too young to figure it out. And what he meant was, be happy with what you have, be content, nose down, get your job done, like we heard earlier in the bigger room. Be a good worker, right? You'll just stay far in one company, you stay there forever and you're done. But absolutely not. So playing it safe, I think it's defining what safe means to you, right? Because safe may mean one thing to you and something to someone else. And with me, it's, you know, the tension is there because first generation professional, first generation, you know, 4-year degree, master's degree, all that, and so everyone's watching you in the next generation as well. But it's like, what's safe for me is taking educated and calculated risks, right? So which really hones into what I do for work and risk management. So it's like, it may not seem safe to you, and you're like, why is Jackie doing that? Oh my God, yeah, loca, she's gonna have no job, and the health insurance, and the kids, but with me, it's like, I did the pros, the cons, calculated risks, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna go for it. So it's taking those calculated risks, and with that mindset, it's like not avoiding risk, but understanding the purpose, why I'm moving the way I'm moving, and being strategic, right? Like you heard Jerry say earlier, being very strategic, very intentional with the type of risks I'm comfortable taking, knowing, and then also, you know, it's. And I have my little notes here, I didn't want to forget what I was going to say, but it's choosing between the two paths, right? And it's like honoring where I come from, with knowing that my parents and my ancestors have fought and done a lot to get us where we are, but also knowing that I have to take those risks to show the next generation, right? As a girl mom, and an auntie, and a cousin, showing that take risks is going to lead you somewhere else. And creating a broader definition of success for myself and for those that are coming out.
I love that educated and calculated risk. You know, the risk that we don't take, we don't know what the outcome is.
The answer is always no.
And you gotta open the door and see what's behind the door.
Yeah.
Well, there's an old saying, you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
true.
Being comfortable to work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rosanna, in your work with high achievers, what patterns do you see in those who successfully pivot versus those who stay stuck?
Good question.
Yeah, so I work with women that are in corporate America that continue to go up the ranks, but then there's always a point that they want to off ramp, right? They're done with it. They've had enough. They've done their time type thing.
Jail. Done my time.
And they're like, all right, we're good to go. And then what happens is, so for example, this happened to me as well. I had, you know, I worked at JP Morgan. I worked at the biggest brokerage shops. I worked at TradeWeb, the last place. These are all really big names in the industry. People know about TradeWeb. I don't know if everybody knows about it, but in the industry, people know about it. And when you leave the industry, you all of a sudden realize, oh, I'm by myself. Like I have to, you know, show people how awesome I am without all these things behind me. And so the biggest thing is that self-doubt. That self-doubt of like, am I enough alone without the companies that have hired me, that believed in me, behind me. And that takes a little bit of time. So it takes a little bit of time to find your voice, the brave voice that you have. We all have it. You just have to find it again because you were so restricted in corporate. We all get to be a little restricted, right? You're speaking for yourself and for the company. And so sometimes it gets muffled who you really are. And then the other thing I want to mention also is that fear of failure. And so when you also have, you know, the backing of a company and a bunch of teams behind you, it's sometimes not so scary to fail. But when you're by yourself, you're scared that everyone's seeing you. They're like, oh my God, you did that. Ooh, that's bad. No, nobody cares. Nobody cares. You're the one that cares. And that takes a second, maybe a second or two, to realize it and to stop getting out of your head and stop, you know, kind of overthinking it and over-analyzing it because you want to get it perfect. You're not going to get it perfect. Nobody does. So you keep moving. You keep moving forward. And so the self-doubt and the fear of failure, those are the big two.
Thank you. Wow, it's true. The fear holds us back. All right, we're going to do some rapid fire questions for each of you. So here's the first one. In a couple of words, what is your next bold movie?
Well, I'll say the next panel I'm doing is scaling. So my next big goal is scaling AI agents. Those are the words that I want to throw out there because I haven't really, I know about them, I'm studying them, but I haven't actually put them into play. So we're gonna, that's the 2026 goal.
So funny that you said scaling because what came to my mind immediately is, for me, it's scaling my impact, right? I love to give back because I climb and I wish I knew then what I know now. I do a lot of different boards and it's, I want to be able to scale my impact that I, and the legacy that I leave behind.
Well, I guess it's a goal, an ambition. I really want to be a national figure.
Yes.
I'm going to finish it in August, so I'm going to steady pace. The name of the memoir is Adversity Damned, a Jersey Latina story. I've faced a lot of adversity in my life: breast cancer, paralysis, acute depressive disorder. I mean, God has thrown me a few things, but you know, they say He doesn't take you more than you can handle. And there was an old commercial many years ago. I'm much older than many of you. It's for Timex watches, and it said, "Takes a licking and keeps on ticking." That's
I remember that.
Yes, that's me. And the second thing is I'm collaborating with Ken Burns, the documentarian, who is going to be doing the history of the CIA. And I've already had a Zoom call with him. And I called him Mr. Burns, and just called him Ken. So I'm on first day visit. Anyway, I want to be a resource because I want our story to be told. I want the American public to understand who we are, what we do, and we're the silent service. All the great things we do, nobody ever finds out about, just we.
I watched Homeland.
What? That's a pretty
It's a good one, right?
Yeah, pretty close. Not quite, but pretty close. Anyway, he's going to wait a couple of years to start it in earnest, but he's already ramping up the research. He's very thorough, as you can imagine. And I'm a part of the crew, and he used to say to me, at the end of the Zoom call, he had a manila folder with my name on it, a label. He said, "Look, we've started a file on it." I said, "File away, my life is an open book." So Ken Burns has a finalist, so that's cool. So we'll see.
Well, can't wait to read the book.
Thank you.
Everybody get her autograph now.
She's
too clear.
Thank
Do we
you.
still have time?
The next session starts in 6
We have probably like 2
Oh,
minutes.
all right. I'm going to ask you another rapid fire question and then see if the audience has any questions. What's one thing you wish you would have done differently?
I'll say. Always trusted my instincts.
Are you ahead?
Because that is the answer.
That I was going to say is trusted my voice, right? And shut out the naysayers a lot sooner. And that little voice in your head is like, "You're not good enough." Yeah, I am good enough.
I would have asked for more. Because I could have.
Yeah.
But I was a good girl. Until I woke up.
That's
right. That's right.
Is that where the know your worth
I'm reasonable. I mean, if you can see what a Deloitte or a Booz would charge for, like, I'm cheap. And I have some clients who are like, well, I said, sorry, if you can't pay me my work, then you're just and they're like, oh, I said, yeah, it's like that. So you have to stand your ground, and know how terrific you are.
So many great nuggets, and this to me is really what, advocating for yourself and being your own voice, right? And being up there. So, audience, any questions for any of these?
No.
So, I believe that there's a stigma out there that Latinas, especially Latina women, can do the same job for a lot less money. So I resonate with you with what you're saying of sometimes, people think that you're cheap, and it's a little hard to say, hey, I'm worth this. What would you give as advice for any of y'all to give those saying, hey, you know what, this is actually worth it? Aside from what my background is, what I look like, or the fact that I probably came from, that I did come from immigrant parents.
So I'm gonna start with this. One of the things that I learned, and it took me a while, is you need to really understand what's out there. Because when I was 21, I didn't have any. I wanted to go into finance, but I didn't have any mentors or anybody that would even give me any guidance. So I'm writing in my journal, I want to make 100K in the next 10 years. I thought that was a huge number, and I was like, oh my God, mine is 1996. And I'm like, this is what I want to make. And sure enough, in 10 years, that's exactly what I was making. And here's the problem. Everyone around me was making more. And I was like, wait a minute, but this is what I wanted to make, and I didn't know at the time at all that was so underpaid. And so the next 10 years, I went above and beyond, because I was so mad. I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know, I didn't realize it. I'm gonna make, and I went to $500,000. And I didn't care how crazy or outlandish it was, and I didn't have any proof. And sure enough, under 10 years, I was making. So what I want to tell you is that yes, you can gauge what other people are making and try to make what they're making, or you can just make it up. And it works just as good. And call me, because I'll help you manifest.
I was gonna say, the next session starts in 30 minutes.
Yes.
All right, one more question, because there's so many great nuggets.
We have 1 more minute.
One more. Oh, sorry, the gentleman had his hand up.
What's the SID mean?
Service, integrity, and excellence.
And we will end on that note.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I know it's the end of the day, that was hopefully also some chocolate. So I was like, it's gonna be a long day. So I'm very excited to be here and learn from all of you. So to get us started, and very briefly introduce yourselves and then define authenticity. What does that mean to you?
Hello everyone, I'm Yvonne Ramirez. So I am the founder and CEO of Elevating Authenticity, so it works out perfectly. And for me, authenticity is when there is an alignment between your values and your mission. So if you have already identified what your purpose is with your actions. So authenticity is not only in work, it's also how we're in relationship with each other, how are we living our day-to-day. So it's really, are my actions matching what I want?
Nobody's going to describe it better than here with the authenticity. It's the ownership, right? So it's going to be very similar. So I'm Esteban Colores. I'm the current owner, because I just launched my business a month and a half ago. Congratulations! In the entrepreneurial world, but I used to be an HR executive, not an HR executive for PNG for 23 years. So we're going to talk about leader, about culture, and in corporate world. But for me, authenticity is consistency. Consistency is, as you say, you use alignment for me, consistency on what you say and what you do and what you think. In the good moments, when it's harder, it's the bad moments. That's where the misalignment will come.
Well, my name is Marilyn Zahuela. I am the founder and the owner of Majestic Touch Enterprise, where your idea already has a plan, and that plan already has a structure.
like consultant. My consulting and coaching is very disruptive. So for me, authenticity is that. Is to be aligned with my purpose. I am unapologetic. I am a trailblazer, humble, empowered by faith, not by fear. I do not compromise on my beliefs, on my truth, on my essence. This is me, and that's authenticity. I am tenacious with my voice, because as I speak, I create. Do you know the definition of abracadabra? ¿Sabes lo que es abracadabra?
Sí.
Patas de cabra.
Pata de cabra.
Bueno, pues abracadabra, the meaning, the real meaning is as I create, as I speak. So take that in mind, because that is part of your authenticity, and you have to be intentional in every step and confident, because I know who I am. So when you look at yourself in the mirror, you know who you are. So you have to be true to yourself. That's authenticity. Be you, no matter what.
Something you know already. I was
Yeah.
like, now my where the patas on the cabra comes from. So thank you for defining that, because authenticity is a term that is thrown around everywhere, and I've heard some people talk about it as if you just really show up and say whatever you want, and I think you still have to be in the social construct and give your thought.
Yeah.
So just know when to show what part of you. So thank you for that. With that, sometimes, maybe also for me as a first generation Mexican American, it's hard to show up with your fullness out there. Sometimes it may not be accepted or taken for what it is, and you feel completely misunderstood. Can each of you show me or share with us an example of a moment where it was difficult to show up fully as yourself, and what you do? Maybe we can start backwards.
Yeah. Okay. It was very difficult for me to be here today.
Yeah.
As I was sharing with them in 2024, I lost all my friends. I lost all my cousins, all my family. I lost everybody because I decided to be truthful to my core. I decided to say yes to me, not to them. So they didn't like it. So this is what I do. I disrupt the environment, I disrupt minds, I disrupt everything that is around me, because I am working to bring the best for my grandkids and great-grandkids. So that's what I do.
You're showing up today. That's good.
Yes, no way. No way, it's no other way. Show us yourself all the time.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab that by yourself into the room. I love it.
Show it out. Perfect. So mine, I would say, I'm currently living it. So it's wonderful that it's here and happening. Because as I was sharing, I have been 23 years in the corporate world. That was my only job. But it also came as a definition of who I was. It came with the title, it came with the expertise, and suddenly 3 months ago that changed. So I've been asking myself every day, who am I and who do I want to continue being? And the first things I ask is, what am I good at? What I love doing? And what do I want to really give back to the world? And when I answered those 3 questions, that's how my business came to life. And I felt the next, whatever 23 years, I want to be able to do and keep doing what makes me unique, and what makes me happy, and what makes me feel awake in the morning. So my business, which is now in a disruptive way, it's trying to help organizations lead their AI transformation, but with the people lenses, bringing in the human side and understanding that technology, as we were sharing in the previous panel, is just a tool. And it's through the magic that humans bring by themselves and being self every day is that we can make the tools maximize themselves. So that's me figuring out every day, every hour today in the entrepreneur world how to continue being me. And I keep saying the joke, I'm still finding my entrepreneur chromosome and it might be in my toe. I'll get there. So it's a journey of every day.
That's a perfect transition because that's actually the tagline to my business, that authenticity is a journey. Because every day you're put in situations, like you said, that you feel like, what if I speak up? Is this the right moment? So I think for me, I'll just share a personal example since in a different question I'll share a professional one. My divorce is actually me becoming authentic. So I was a disruptor when I worked in my various jobs. I learned how to navigate being la única Latina in the room. I learned how to navigate being the only woman. So I knew how to be authentic in the workplace. Don't ask me why I shrank myself when it came to my personal relationship. So I was in a relationship for 11 years, and I realized when my dad died, all of a sudden, that my first thought was like the only man in my life that has ever loved me just died, yet I was married. And that's when I realized it was because my ex-spouse didn't support my disruptive nature at work. I was always shrinking, and it was this aha moment of like, you really do, there is this moment where you separate yourself, right? There's work you, there's friend you, there's daughter you, right? Like all these identities we have, but the reality is that they should be intersected. We should be our authentic selves everywhere. And it was so interesting for me to have this aha moment that in my personal life, I was actually not being authentic because I think it was all this, all these messages I've heard about, wait, you're too loud and you're this, who's gonna love you if you're this or that, even though I was able to be loud and all this in like professional world and right, like I was in a room with the president of a university telling them that their policies were hurting survivors of sexual assault. I could be that person, but I couldn't be outspoken in my marriage. And so I think for me, it was such a moment of saying, why could I do it in this space and not that space, where I realized that I was shrinking myself and not being authentic in my everyday moment, and led to my divorce. Thank you, I'm very excited.
Sounds like a divorce party.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's really interesting how we mask ourselves to belong, and eventually, I always say there's nothing more painful than losing yourself.
Yes.
And, I did. I lost myself entirely. I had a horrible crisis of identity, and literally the only thing that I could think of was I'm a Latina, and this is how I joined this organization. And I love these conversations because it's the only place I feel so safe. And I can just be, and we don't have to be, I can speak faster. You can say my name, right? You know, we can celebrate people, we celebrate every day.
We celebrate every day.
But yeah, it's interesting, it's not the thing, it's the, we're not afraid of the, you know, the outcome, we're afraid of the feeling. Yeah, there's mostly a story about the feeling that we're going to make about ourselves. That means I'm not good enough. That means I'm not.
Right, and I think it was for me, my dad's death, where it was like, wait, like literally we can die. And if I were to die in this moment, because my dad's death was unexpected, he did not have cancer, it was so unexpected. Like I thought we had at least another 10 to 15 years with my dad. But that's what made me realize that I was so afraid of the story of like, what does it mean to be a good wife? What does it mean to like grow and all this stuff, that I stayed in a relationship where I shrank myself because it felt safe. But it actually wasn't safe once I realized if I were to die right now, like would they even have a funeral? Like what would they, like, it was an honest question where I was like, well, how would they even react? And it was just this moment, but it's true. It's true. Right, like it's so true where like, it was this moment of like, this is not the person, like this is just not working and they don't even really truly know who I am. Those are my best friends, that's my sister, that's my mom. Like those people, it was my dad who knew me 100%. That was why my first reaction was like, the only man that's ever loved me fully just passed away.
Way to take your own pen and rewrite your story. So, and we all have our own pens, so remember, there's that. Now, shifting a little to the professional arena, I know you help create spaces for people to understand their identity, values, etc. What does it really take to be lead authentically in action, even when you're in an environment that doesn't fully support the you that you want to show up?
Yeah, so I always say that being authentic in the workplace, well in life, but especially in the workplace, is a revolution. You're being a revolutionary when you are being authentic, because we are taught in the work culture, especially in the United States, it's that you have to disappear, right? Like, it's not, I wrote this report, it's my team to this, right? Like we're really, it's counterculture to be authentic. And so in order to survive in an environment that may not support you or not, it's really important to create a strong internal infrastructure to help you from the external. And so what that means is really knowing your values. I mean, when the pandemic first hit, I remember before we all went home, I was doing a values activity with my team, so as the director, and there was this moment where I was like, I don't know my values. And I broke down crying after my team left the room. I was like, because I was facilitating, so, you know, they were doing it, and I had an example that I always gave, but when they left, I was like, wait a minute, I didn't actually do this for myself. And I went to my work wife's office and started crying, like, I don't know who I am. And she's like, I know who you are. And listen, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right, and that goes to like really being able to say like, these are my values, because those then become your guide. They help you know if you are doing right for yourself, right? Because your values is what leads you. That's what makes you an individual. And even if you have the same value as your mom, your sister, you interpret it differently and you live it differently. So the first one is really knowing, especially when you're in not the greatest supportive environment, is knowing what are my values. Because when you are in that toxic moment, you feel lost. And so knowing who you are reminds you. And then I think the next step, which can be United Latinas, is what is that community? Like I said, I went to my work wife office and started crying, and she's like, I know, you know these are your values. And I'm like, oh yeah, right, but like, what is that community you can go to where you can be 100% yourself? Because if you can't right now identify who knows you inside out, who can you say something and not, you have to be like, I want to make sure this doesn't sound problematic, I don't want to get canceled. But right, like sometimes we say things and we need to learn that's problematic, but in the moment you're like, how do I say this? Who is that person you can go to and not be fearful that something's going to happen, right? You need that community because they know you, they love you for everything, and you can grow. And then I think the third step is really knowing, when are you really thinking about adapting or abandoning? And so there's not going to be a workplace, unless you create it yourself, which I'm all about creating, where you have to adapt, right? Like I can't be 100%, but what are these, how am I adapting? But being able to recognize when does adaptation become abandonment? When are you completely losing yourself? Because when you completely lose yourself, it's time to leave. And I think something that I will say that I've learned is the last job I ever had before I started my own business, I was working at a nonprofit that was serving students of color in college, and all the staff, C-suite, everything, were people of color. So on paper, on website, this is such a great environment, I'm finally gonna be with my people. And it was the worst job I ever had. The discrimination I experienced, the harassment, it was toxic, it was horrible. And what I realized was I did not want to leave because I kept thinking about the students, right? I kept thinking, who's gonna support them if not me? And first of all, one person can't fix a system. And second, I realized I had completely abandoned myself. I was no longer adapting and thinking about like what was worst case scenario. I had completely abandoned myself, and there was no more love for Yvonne. And so that's when I knew I needed to leave. But I think when you're navigating authenticity in a workplace, it's really trying to identify, am I adapting or am I abandoning? And having people you can be authentic with, and really knowing your values to be your guide.
Very relatable. Stephanie, I want to change it a little bit because you have so much experience in the corporate world. How does authenticity help us shape culture?
I think it's just the most powerful thing when we really bring ourselves to the office, right? Because we spend most of the time in the office or in the corporate world or in Zoom, wherever we're connecting right now, but we spend most of the time there that we're masking. It's exhausting, right? And then you get back and it's so draining, and actually then you're not even able to distinguish who am I being outside. So I think it's just so much powerful to know, I can take with you that it's first what's important for you, your mission, your values, but also how to cooperate with the corporate world. One of the things that I did and facilitated in my HR role was creating trainings within teams that they could understand their differences. Because that's where you make things more powerful. When you understand what's your vision, where are your values, but also how do you think, how do you analyze things, how do you solve problems, what do you bring to in short. And my biggest learning was we tend to segment people a lot. And by doing that, you put them into stereotypes. So the first thing I joined the Hispanic community in PNG, nobody spoke Spanish. And I was like, oh. I felt like my people. And I said, okay. So it's my people, but not my people. But I also understood that I was 5 years in the country, and they were first generation, second generations. I had cousins that my uncle never taught them Spanish. And I needed to understand what they came from. And when I was in that meeting, they were telling them, embrace your Latin traits. And I was like, what are my Latin traits? Go and have a conversation with your leader about your Latin traits. What do I go and tell them? I've been in Panama surrounded by all Latin American people, and I never thought the Mexican traits, right? So I didn't know how to have that conversation with my manager, and my manager was a Chinese person. So then I realized, the conversation is not about me. The conversation is about her, that she already put me in the stereotype that I'm not. And based on that, she's thinking, Stephanie's loud. I can be loud. But sometimes I'm not. Oh, Latins are bucky. Yes, we are. But sometimes we're not. Or they're very family oriented. Oh, everybody could be family oriented. So it was hard for me to understand how people were actually putting myself into because of the stereotype. But I also needed to understand that if I'm here, I can go and tell them, yes, I'm bucky. And I use a lot of my hands, that's what I do. And soon I realized, good people, I'm getting them easy. That's my bubbling. But I needed to not do it only for myself, but for those around me, so they could understand who I was. And I'm not just Latin, and I'm not Hispanic, multi-family oriented. I'm also many other things. And with that authenticity and clear vision of what you want to drive, who you are, how you bring things. That's also part of what I do. How do I lead? What do I bring to the table? That's me. And I wanted my manager to also understand that, not because I went to the Hispanic conversation, it's because she needed to know me. And I think that's the powerful element of being in a company where you're able to know yourself, be self-aware, share that, and then enable psychological safety so other people can actually feel comfortable sharing those tools. And be curious about asking them. Be more curious about knowing other people, and then finding the strengths and the magic that we all bring to the table. Not because we're Hispanic, but because who we are, what we learn. Because I could be sitting to a Hispanic, Mexican, HR person, and we're completely different. And it's based on our story. It's based on what we eat, based on what we learn, what we believe on, and that just makes us unique and very powerful.
That's absolutely true. You know, this is the first time in my career that I have a Latino boss. Ever in all my years working, and I noticed positive bias, and it feels pretty good. I look at my very white husband, I'm like, it's nice to meet you. As we grow, not only as leaders, but as business owners and professionals, our identities also evolve. So how do you walk that fine line about still being authentic, but allowing yourself to evolve and not be hostage to the story about yourself that you have? How do we do that?
You know, it's funny when you say story, I'm listening to all of you, and I'm like, I'm not going to speak about my story, because my story is 55 years old and evolving. So I'm going to ask something to everybody here. How many of you know that you were a thought before becoming who you are? You were just a thought. Then you became an embryo. Then we are who we are today. We evolve, right? It's the same in every area. In leadership, business ownership, entrepreneur. You have the idea, right? It's a thought. Then you start planning. You start structuring. So people get stuck. So other people move with the idea, with the service, with the product, with the trade, and just they're getting money, and they're like, oh, they feel success. But then you come stagnant. And you're like, what is going on? What is happening? You stop evolving. You got stuck on the money. You got stuck on fame. You got stuck on everybody relying on you. Moms, we stayed there as mom. You know, when I realized that nobody needed me, yes, nobody needed me. After my son had COVID-12 in 2015, declared dead, 60 days later, got out of the bed. The same doctor that told me to prepare the funeral was the same doctor that I signed the release crying and said, we didn't have nothing to do. That was God. That is a miracle. And this guy was healed. Nothing the same way. So after that he left with his dad, his dream. That was his dream. I didn't stop him. I wanted him to be the man, the leader, the guy that I wanted to be. Didn't know nothing about him for 8 years. They called me back. He was in bed again, heart attack, left side paralyzed. He's blind in one side. He's working. He's good. He's getting dialysis as we speak right now. But that moment, when I realized that the kid that needed me the most didn't need me, that my faith family rejected me, that my friends rejected me because I was evolving in my leadership. I stood up. My family, I lost my family, you know how? My aunt's funeral, I was speaking about forgiveness. They closed the coffin. They pushed me away in front of everybody, and I felt like, oh my God, so humiliated. But one of my aunts hugged me and told me, you are el orgullo de nuestra familia. You are our pride. You were the first one to go to college. You were the first one to get married. You were the first one that is bilingual. You're the first one with a book. You're the first one that is a business owner. You're doing all this so you have people. And that's what they hate you. They're not going to accept you. They're not going to applaud you. Because the envy goes along with it all. So as leaders, business owners, remember you were a thought. Now you are like, for me, I was 300 and something pounds. Look at me. I lost 100 and something. Menopause will be back in some kind of way. I'm evolving every single day and accepting. Because one of the things of being authentic is accepting who you are, who you were, and embrace what is coming. And create it. Be creative. You are only who you are because you created it. Don't give permission. Don't give power to anyone. Doesn't matter what they think. Because they used to call me la gordita de la familia, the nerd. I was going to go to the beach with a whole bunch of books and books. That's my life. So they called me that. But I have great grandparents who trained me to be a leader. And business owner. They want me to be the governor. I don't think so. But they trained me since I was a kid. As my parents, since I wasn't very, they rejected me. And everybody else, my grandparents embraced me, loved me. I am who I am because they taught me since I was a kid. And I am who I am because I decided. And I saw that nobody the guy that needed me to check his sugar every day, the guy that is spent next to his bed for 60 days without leaving the hospital, taking showers in public bathrooms en el lavamano, ahí como otras personas usando el baño, just imagine that. He didn't need me anymore. I found myself. The day also my daughter got married, I am a wedding planner. got married without me in the room. Somebody planned her wedding, made her look so bad. Humiliated her so ugly when I wasn't there. That made my life wrong. Two babies. My husband kneeled down, picked me up, and said, my mom and my brother were there. Everybody was broke down. My husband picked me up and said, in my eyes, and said, baby, there's no one in this world that can pick you up, that can help you get out of there. So your Father, your Heavenly Father who created you, who knows you, is the only one. Go to your prayer room and stay there for hours. I did. And from there, the day I got out there, I evolved. I was no longer a mom. I was no longer a daughter. I was no longer a friend. I was no longer a cousin. Came out there. Marian Samuela, the disruptive coach, the one that is authentic, that is unique, that I don't care, I am unapologetic on my truth, on my faith, and I always say this, and I can say this in Hispanics here. I always think different from other cultures. It has me faith. This is my faith. And I don't care what you believe. I don't care. You believe whatever you want to believe. If you want to be whoever you want to be, do whatever, do it. You're not going to change. I'm evolving in the woman that God created. And that is evolving in my leadership.
Now, do not make me change, but you change so much. So evolution is change. Yeah. Who you needed to be.
Yes, so you be who you are, okay?
Yes.
Take all of us. Who you needed to be. All of us. Because we met on Zoom.
Yeah, like literally.
Literally.
I love growth. I know that the thing with growth is that it comes with a lot of loss. People don't want you to grow and play a different role that you're playing. So we gotta have your community around you so that you can be pushing forward and have a necessary loss and close. I call it the cocooning. Every time I go through my next chapter, I literally now have a ritual to cocoon, process, try to breathe, and then move to my next skip. So with that, rapid fire to close out. One piece of advice that you leave everybody with?
I would say really allowing yourself to be your own compass. I think there's so many social norms that go around about being a caretaker, about being this, but at the end of the day, are you happy and know who you're looking at in the mirror?
I was going to say something about mirrors, so I like that. See, we're passing. We didn't understand that one, but it's coming out very well. So I think it started to knowing who you are, feeling comfortable in that scheme. Every morning, when you look yourself at the mirror, set yourself for keeping yourself authentic, being happy, and then bringing other people around you to that same place.
My advice is going to be, and I'm going to ask for education.
Disruptive, we know that. We're getting used to it.
Everybody stand up. Yeah, everybody. First step. Because we're closing. And my piece of advice is, in that moment when I was there, I received so much affirmation, and I had a community that helped me. I had 7 coaches in the years. And I learned the importance of repeating something in front of you.
We didn't plan it before COVID.
We did not try, but we could. So I want you to close your eyes, picture yourself in the mirror, and you're going to repeat with me. Take a deep breath, okay? I am aligned with my purpose.
I am aligned with my purpose.
You sound like you were in a funeral. Come on, from inside. Come on. Okay. Come on. I am aligned with my purpose.
I am aligned with my purpose.
And unapologetic in my truth.
And unapologetic in my truth.
I am tenacious.
I am tenacious.
I rise.
I rise.
I persist.
I persist.
I do not back down.
I do not back down.
My voice is brave.
My voice is brave.
My story matters.
My story matters.
My faith goes before me.
My faith goes before me.
And please shout this. I do not shrink.
I do not shrink.
I do not silence myself.
I do not silence myself.
I speak with intentions.
I speak with intentions.
I live with corazón.
I live with corazón.
I walk in confidence.
I walk in confidence.
I honor where I come from.
I honor where I come from.
And boldly, put a step up. You're going to do a step. I boldly step into where I'm going. Hoy mi voz es valiente.
Hoy mi voz es valiente.
Hoy mi presencia abre espacios.
Hoy mi presencia abre espacios.
I am authentic.
I am authentic.
I am a brave voice.
I am a brave voice.
So if you want this information, let me know and I will send it to you in email. That's my piece of advice. Look at yourself in the mirror.
Thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you.